once I came to after the hospital visit, I haven't had, a single headache. I haven't had a single thing that makes me think that anything is wrong. So
download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now. Jesse, man, you're stepping in. You're replacing Steve Garcia, UFC Nashville. Take us through the process of getting this fight booked.
Yeah, so, we got the call when it was 3 weeks away, which seems like a short time, but for me, I stay ready to go, and coming off a fight just a couple months ago, I'm always in shape. So, 3 weeks is perfect for me. I don't really need much more time than that. So, I like the quick turnaround, and I was excited to hear that it was 3 weeks away, honestly.
Nice. And in the UFC, it seemed like they announced this fight at lightweight, but I seen it at featherweight as well. Could you clear that up?
Yeah, it is at featherweight. Maybe some confusion right now. There was some post about lightweight, but it is at featherweight. That's my normal weight class. I only fought up at lightweight because it was Jim Miller. Featherweight is where I will stay.
No doubt. It's good to see you back at featherweight, man. That's the weight class you want to be at, right? Your optimal weight.
For sure, yeah. Definitely usually feel stronger and bigger at featherweight. Obviously this time we got a little taller opponent than usual. But love the matchup.
Before we get into the matchup and Sean Woodson, man, I got to ask you about the mustache, man. Like, what's the inspiration behind that?
Just started growing my facial hair, and the mustache happened like that. And I use a little bit of wax, but it just happened naturally and organically. So I rocked with it, and I haven't shaved it in about 5 years, probably. Yeah, yeah. It gets aggravating because it's hard to eat certain foods, of course, and you always got to keep it clean. But I enjoy it.
For sure, for sure. Okay, Sean Woodson, man, thoughts on him and the fighting style that he has?
Love Sean Woodson as a fighter. Watched him several times. Long rangey boxer. Doesn't like to wrestle and grapple that much. His strengths are long, straight punches. He's been in some great fights, honestly. So it's an opponent I respect. He's got 5 or 6 fights in the UFC, and he's got a good UFC record. So I was pleased to get the call on a guy with 4 UFC wins. That really excites me.
You're kind of tall for the division, you know what I mean? But he's the tallest, I believe 6'2". Like you mentioned, tall, long, rangy. Who's the tallest fighter you've ever faced?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. I fought a guy that's 6'4", and I fought another guy that's 6. I fought 2 other guys that are 6'2". So as a pro, I have fought three times against. I'm sorry, one was an amateur. As a pro, I fought 2 guys that are 6'2" and above. So I actually like fighting a taller opponent. I find a lot of advantages as far as the height goes. You can look at it you can look at things 2 different ways all the time, but I'm going to take the advantages that I can of him being taller and me being shorter.
Without revealing too much, what are the advantages of being the shorter fighter, which you're not that short, but you are in this matchup?
Yeah. So, for instance, just one that comes to mind, like Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler fought. And, Michael Chandler is underneath him, landing big explosive shots from underneath. So that's just kind of a perception of it. The takedown may be a little easier sometimes when you're going against a taller opponent. Just the center of gravity, you're a little bit lower, so punches can come from a lower position, takedowns come from a lower position, so it can be used as an advantage.
And for yourself, do you feel like speed and explosiveness, you talk about the Michael Chandler fight versus Dan Hooker, that's a big advantage, man?
Yeah, sure. When your reach is whatever Sean's is, let's say 78 inches, I think, it takes longer for the reach to get there and come back. So that's a side of it as well, the explosion, and just the in and out of it. Yeah.
And as well, the fighting style, right? Some tall guys can get in a clinch and use elbows, you know what I mean? And some other tall guys, if you get in tight with them, they can't really do anything because they're the distance fighter, right? In this one, what do you see?
Yeah, so, that's something we want to utilize is tight clinch boxing. I love throwing tight hooks, uppercuts. Um, Sean hasn't worked the clinch much before. That's not saying that he won't this fight. I expect him to be improved as always and have those game plans. But, a clinch is somewhere that I'm really good at. I enjoy the clinch and I wrestle from there. So um, if we go to the clinch, great. I'd love to close that distance and fight in the clinch.
For sure. Let's rewind to your UFC debut. It was on extremely short notice against Jim Miller. It's hard to pass up that opportunity. Number one, your UFC debut. Number two, fighting Jim Miller. You know what I mean? What were those few days like ahead of the fight?
Man, it was incredible. We got the call on Thursday. We flew out Thursday night. Weigh-ins were Friday. Fight was Saturday. It was an unbelievable experience. Of course, I wanted it to last longer. Jim Miller caught the perfect shot at the perfect time. And, to me, this feels like my debut coming up. It's like the Jim Miller was just to get my foot in the door. But, I'm super grateful for that opportunity. That's not something that anybody would get the call for. So I got to fight somebody that's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And, just hats off to Jim Miller. Let's give him all the praise while we're talking about him. Just hats off to Jim Miller. Let's give him all the praise while we're talking about him.
For sure. And when you look at that fight, how do you put that in the rearview mirror? You know what I mean? Fighters, their losses linger longer than their wins.
Yeah, sure. It's always going to be in my head. If it wasn't, then I wouldn't be a true fighter. It's in my head every day that now I have to redeem myself. But, I wasn't too upset about it. It just, it happened like that. I moved up to featherweight. I moved up to lightweight to take the fight. So it's not like we weren't going to win. We showed up to get the UFC win, but it happened how it did, and you have to move forward, whether you win or lose. If you're going to continue to be a fighter, after that loss or after the win, it's back to the grind.
For sure, for sure. And brain health is an important issue in this sport. What do you say to the people that think that you're coming back too soon? They're concerned for you.
Sure, yeah, and I'll, that's a good point. But when I think of it, once I came to after the hospital visit, I haven't had a single headache. I haven't had a single thing that makes me think that anything is wrong. So if it were something that were wrong, I would be able to tell with ease, and I feel great.
That sounds good, man. And since the debut, early June, how quick were you back into training? Most fighters are stubborn. They're like, man, I got to get this bad taste out of my mouth. I'm back next week.
Yeah, we were right back at it. Of course, I wasn't sparring or getting hit in the head for 30 days. I was on the suspension, but I was still able to get in there and roll through some techniques and stay in shape, of course, running and lifting. So, man, I was right back at it. I'm not good at sitting around.
Do you go back and study the previous fights? You know what I mean? Like every fight after you win or lose, whatever.
Yeah, I critique myself a lot. Sometimes it's tough to watch yourself. For me, it's tough to watch myself, whether it's good or bad. But yeah, I'm always studying film. I watch. I'm a huge fan, so I constantly watch film on everything and everybody.
Who do you like watching? Well, like what kind of styles do you like?
Man. If I just had some that come to my head right off the bat, of course, Conor McGregor. He's unbelievable to watch. Dustin Poirier, love his style. Max Holloway, unbelievable style. Yeah, and like at featherweight, yeah, Max Holloway at featherweight. Those are some of my favorite fighters.
What do you think of that Max Holloway Korean Zombie fight, man? I don't like it, to be honest with you. It might be rough.
It doesn't make too much sense. You may see Max put on a heck of a show.
Yeah, it might be his best show ever. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know. It's not. It's scary sometimes, man. But yeah, Max is a great fighter. You know what I mean? A great person to study. For your training camp, like what is the team? Like, can you break down the coaching staff that you have?
Yeah, so our base is we're a jiu-jitsu school. For this camp, we worked with some taller guys. We brought some in around the state. Couple pros. One is actually one of the guys that I fought as a pro. He's 6'4", and then the other guy's a featherweight, and he's 6'2". So I'm getting a lot of good looks from some taller guys, and that's really helped in sparring a lot. Um, but you know, my grappling and wrestling or my strong suits is not something that I have to dial into on that. But as far as the striking and just the games that Sean plays, that's kind of what we've been going over, is more the tactics that he's going to play. And yeah, we've been working more stand up for this, just to be more comfortable feeling that range of Sean.
Sean Woodson, he's been out for, I believe, over a year now. What
Yeah.
what was the longest layoff for you?
So the longest layoff was I took a layoff after one of my last Fury fights. I was trying to get a UFC fight, and we didn't get a UFC fight, so we took another Fury fight, which was like, I want to say close to a year that I was waiting to get the UFC call. Ended up taking another Fury fight, and then the Jim Miller fight came right after that. So, man, taking the time off when you're forced to sucks, but it gives you ample training time. You know, that's the good thing about it, is you get to stay in the gym and work on things that you normally don't get to work on. So, it's got its pros and cons, but I like staying busy.
Yeah, and it's better to have time off when you're not injured. You know what I mean? When you're injured, you're forced to take that time off.
Yep.
So mentally, you go into the next fight a little bit more clear, right?
Yeah, for sure. When you're injured and down, it's in a negative way. You know, when you're healthy and you're not fighting, it's still positive. You know, you still make goals in the gym and get better in the gym.
When you returned for that fight, the next fight after the layoff, how did you
Yeah.
feel in the first couple minutes?
Oh, I felt good. Mentally, I had to get ready for it. Like, I've listened to Dominic Cruz talk about cage rust and things like that. You know, that's not really a real thing. If you work in the gym and you almost make fights in the gym in a certain way. You know, of course, you're not trying to hurt your training partners, but you can create that same type of atmosphere in the gym. And of course, it's not the same as a fight, but it's close enough to where you can stay ready.
Yeah, fighting is so volatile. You could have the worst training camp of your life and go out there and have the best
Yeah,
performance of your
yeah,
life and have
or
the best
opposite.
camp. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, a lot of time it's funny. That's a good point. A lot of times at training, my brother's one of my best training partners. I'll just tell him like that doesn't really matter because like, this or that could happen in the fight, and we have no control over it. So it's almost just yeah. I don't know what to say about that, but it's one of those weird things about fighting. Yeah, like the Jim Miller fight. Yeah, that's a good point. It's like anything can happen.
Yeah, man, that's another reason to respect the fighters to the fullest, because like you do all of these things, you check all the boxes, you know what I mean, and then you go in there and you put it all on the line, dude, because you don't know what exactly is gonna happen, and one person's got to win and one person's got to lose. You mentioned your brother, he
Yeah.
he also fights.
He doesn't fight. He's just been training as long as I have, and he's one of my coaches, one of my mid holders. He does jiu-jitsu with us, so man, that's really good to have. Is just how close we are, and he's there every day for me at the gym, so that's pretty special.
Did you guys start training when you guys were kids?
Yeah, when we were kids, I was about 20 and he was about 13 or so. So that's pretty cool. We've been in the game together now for, he's been there with me through all my fights, and now we're in the UFC. So it's pretty special.
Yeah, man, that's great to share those moments together.
Yeah.
You get another walk through to the octagon. How do you want to perform in this matchup? What do you envision against Sean Woodson?
Yeah. So, the biggest thing, I want to walk out of there with a win. I want to get my hand raised. I want to get my full paycheck, and I'm fighting for a 50K bonus. I'm looking for a knockout. I'm looking for fight of the night or submission of the night. So, I want to go out there and display Jesse Butler. I didn't get enough time in there last time. I'm ready to get in there and perform.
Yeah, man, it's great to see you get another opportunity. August 5th, UFC Fight Night Nashville. How good is it to be going to Nashville, man, to fight? It's gonna be a crazy crowd, I think.
Yeah, man. It's cool because I'm in Louisiana. We're actually driving up. My family's driving up to Nashville, so it's almost like a home fight in a way. We don't have to fly out. We get to drive, so it feels good, man. And just to walk out to the crowd, I'm treating this as my debut in a way, and I can't wait.
Nashville's the South, right? Would you consider it the South?
Yeah, you can consider Tennessee the South. We're driving north to get there, but to us, it's the South. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a home game, man. Thank you so much, Jesse, for taking the time, man. I know
Thank
you're busy.
you.
You're probably going to another training session, right?
I just got done for the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool, man. Thank you so much, man, for taking the time, and all the best.
Thank you, man.